Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Defiance, watching the large screen in front of him. The blue light from the holographic display filled the room as alien faces appeared before him. These were not friendly visitors. These were the members of the Galactic Council, and they had come to deliver an ultimatum to humanity. The lead figure was Chancellor Veltar, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His people, the Zephyrians, had ruled part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Next to him sat the Hive Queen Zaxth, an insect-like being with multiple eyes that glowed red in the dim light. On the other side was Kethnal, a creature made of living crystal whose body sparkled as he moved. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood beside Morrison, her hand resting on her weapon. She had been his tactical advisor for 5 years, and she knew that look on his face. Morrison was angry, but he was keeping it hidden well. Chancellor Veltar began to speak, his voice carrying the weight of authority that came from ruling countless worlds. Admiral Morrison, representative of the human species, we come to you today with an offer of mercy. Morrison said nothing. He simply stared at the alien leader with cold blue eyes. Your species has become a problem, Veltar continued. In just 200 years, you have spread across 400 worlds. You build weapons that concern even our oldest civilizations. You expand faster than any species we have ever encountered. This cannot continue. Hive Queen Zaxth leaned forward, her mandibles clicking as she spoke. We have watched your kind, humans. You are violent. You are aggressive. You threaten the peace that has existed in this galaxy for millennia. The crystal being, Kethnal, added his voice to the conversation. We have seen what your species does. To worlds you conquer. You strip them of resources. You change their atmospheres. You show no respect for the natural order. Morrison finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. And what exactly are you offering? Chancellor Veltar smiled, though it was not a pleasant expression. Complete surrender. Your species will abandon all but one world. We will allow you to keep Earth or another world of your choosing. Your entire population will be relocated. There. You will remain on that single planet, never to leave it again. And if we refuse? Captain Rodriguez asked, stepping forward. The alien leader's smile disappeared. Then you will face the combined might of 12 species. 50,000 ships await our command. We can destroy every human world simultaneously. Your choice is simple: surrender and live, or resist and die. Morrison looked around the bridge. His crew was listening to every word, their faces showing a mixture of fear and anger. Communications Officer Pete Barnes was recording everything, as were the other ships in the human fleet. We have given this offer to over 1,000 species, Veltar said. All of them chose wisely. All of them chose to live. We recommend you do the same. The Hive Queen spoke again, her voice like the sound of metal scraping against metal. Your ships are impressive for such a young species. Your weapons show promise. But you have seen nothing compared to what we can bring against you. Our oldest weapons were destroying civilizations when your people were still living in caves. Morrison studied each alien face carefully. These beings had conquered entire sectors of the galaxy. They had turned mighty civilizations into slaves or refugees. They believed that humans would be just another easy victory. You have 72 hours to decide, Chancellor Veltar announced. Send your answer to these coordinates. Choose surrender, and your people will live. Choose resistance, and we will show you why no species has ever successfully defied the Galactic Council. The holographic display began to fade, but Veltar's voice came through one more time. We recommend you choose. Wisely, Admiral Morrison. We have never had to completely destroy a species, but we are prepared to do so if necessary. The aliens disappeared, leaving the bridge of the Defiance in silence. Morrison stood motionless for several long moments, staring at the empty space, where the hologram had been. Pete Barnes was the first to speak. Admiral, should I contact Earth Command? They need to know about this ultimatum. Morrison turned to face his communications officer. His expression was hard as steel. No, Pete, we're not calling Earth Command. Sir? Rodriguez asked, confused by his response. Morrison walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Lisa, how many human worlds are there now? 412, sir, with more colonies being established every month. And how many humans live on those worlds? Approximately 40 billion, sir. Morrison nodded slowly. 40 billion. People who left Earth to build new lives among the stars. 40 billion people who believed that humanity deserved a place in this galaxy. He turned back to his crew. These aliens want us to abandon everything we've built. They want us to crawl back to one world and stay there forever. Barnes looked uncertain. Admiral, 50,000 ships is a lot of firepower. Maybe we should at least discuss their offer with Earth Command. Morrison's eyes flashed with anger. Discuss what? Surrendering without a fight? Abandoning every human colony? Telling 40 billion people that they have to give up their homes because some aliens think we're expanding too fast? Rodriguez stepped closer to her commander. Jake, what are you thinking? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke in a voice that every person on the bridge could hear clearly. I'm thinking that these aliens made a mistake. They think we're like every other species they've conquered. They think we'll just roll over and accept their terms. He walked back to his command chair and sat down. Pete, I want you to send a message on all frequencies. Make sure every human ship and every human world receives it. Barnes's fingers moved quickly over his console. Ready to transmit, sir. Morrison looked directly into the camera that would carry his words across human space. The Galactic Council has demanded our surrender. They have given us 72 hours to abandon our colonies and retreat to a single world. They believe this is generous. He paused, letting his words sink in. They're about to learn something about humanity that they should have discovered before making threats. We don't negotiate with bullies. We don't surrender to tyrants. And we sure as hell don't abandon our people because someone tells us we're expanding too fast. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Send the message, Pete. As the transmission went out across human space, Captain Rodriguez asked quietly, What happens when the 72 hours are up? Morrison smiled for the first time, since the aliens had contacted them. Then they'll find out why humans have never been easy to kill. President Kate Sullivan sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House. The walls were lined with screens showing the faces of military leaders, scientists, and colonial governors from across human space. The quantum communication links hummed quietly as voices from hundreds of worlds joined the conversation. General Chris Taylor was speaking, his weathered face showing the strain of the situation. Madam President, we need to seriously consider the Council's offer. 50,000 ships is not an idle threat. Our entire fleet consists of maybe 3,000 vessels. 3,000 ships against 50,000, muttered Governor Bill Hendricks from New Montana. His face appeared on one of the screens, and behind him, people could be seen moving equipment and supplies. Those aren't good odds by anyone's math. Dr. Amy Foster, head of Human Defense Research, leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Numbers don't tell the whole story, General. We've been preparing for something like this. Sullivan raised her hand for silence. Before we make any decisions, I want to hear Admiral Morrison's full report. Pete, replay his message. The room fell silent as Morrison's transmission played. Again, his words about not negotiating with bullies and not surrendering to tyrants filled the room. When the message ended, the silence continued for several long moments. General Taylor shook his head. Morrison is a good officer, but he's letting emotion cloud his judgment. We can't fight the entire galaxy. Can't we? Dr. Foster asked quietly. All eyes turned to the research director. Sullivan leaned forward. Amy, what are you talking about? Dr. Foster stood and walked to the main display. With a few touches, she brought up classified files that most of the people in the room had never seen. For the past 10 years, we've been working on projects that were deemed too dangerous to reveal. We called them our doomsday options. The BA screen showed technical drawings and test results that made several military officers whistle in surprise. Project Ragnarok, Dr. Foster continued, was designed as our final option if humanity ever faced complete extinction. We've developed weapons and tactics that go far beyond conventional warfare. Governor Mary Walsh from the Titan colony spoke up from her screen. What kind of weapons are we talking about, Doctor? Quantum entanglement bombs that can strike any target instantly, regardless of distance. Reality anchor devices that can prevent faster-than-light travel in entire star systems, and ships that can phase in and out of normal space. General Taylor looked skeptical. If these weapons are so powerful, why haven't we used them before? Dr. Foster's expression became grim. Because they're designed for total war. There's no such thing as limited engagement with these weapons. Once we use them, there's no going back. President Sullivan studied the technical data on the screen. How long before these weapons are ready for deployment? They're ready now, Madam President. We've been testing them in secret for years. All we need is authorization to begin full production. On one of the communication screens, Governor Hendricks was shouting orders to his people. Sorry for the interruption, he said, turning back to the camera. We're implementing Morrison's evacuation protocols. If the aliens want our worlds, they're going to find empty cities and booby-trapped infrastructure. Bill, what's the situation on the outer colonies? Sullivan asked. We're following the scorched earth policy. Every colony is preparing for invasion. If we can't keep our worlds, we'll make sure the aliens can't use them either. Governor Walsh nodded in agreement. We're doing the same thing, on Titan. The mining stations are being converted to weapon platforms. The refineries are being rigged to explode. Dr. Foster pulled up another file. There's something else, Madam President. We've been monitoring alien communications for years. We know more about their technology and weaknesses than they realize. What have you learned? They rely heavily on energy shields and long-range weapons. They're not prepared for close combat or unconventional tactics. Most importantly, they've never faced an enemy that was willing to die for their cause. General Taylor frowned. What do you mean? Every species they've conquered has eventually surrendered when the cost became too high. They've never fought anyone who preferred death to defeat. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, President Sullivan spoke. The 72-hour deadline is almost up. We need to make a decision. I say we fight, Governor Hendricks declared. My people didn't come to New Montana to live as prisoners on Earth. The Titan colonies agree, Walsh added. We'd rather die free than live as slaves. One by one, the colonial governors voiced their agreement. The military leaders were more divided, but eventually even General Taylor nodded his consent. Dr. Foster looked directly at the president. If we're going to do this, we need to commit completely. Half measures will only get us all killed. Sullivan was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the 40 billion people whose lives hung in the balance. Finally, she stood and faced the cameras that would carry her words across human space. Admiral Morrison was right. We don't negotiate with bullies. We don't surrender to tyrants, and we don't abandon our people because someone thinks we're expanding too fast. She paused, letting her words reach every human world. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that the Council pleaded for peace, but humanity refused. Dr. Foster immediately began issuing orders to her research teams. Begin full production of all Ragnarok weapons. I want every human ship equipped with quantum entanglement devices within 24 hours. Governor Hendricks grinned fiercely from his screen. Madam President, you just made a lot of colonists very happy. We'll show these aliens what humans are really made of. As the meeting ended, and the various leaders began implementing their preparations, President Sullivan remained in her chair, staring at the star charts on the main screen. General Taylor approached her. Madam President, are you sure about this? We're betting the survival of our entire species on untested weapons and the belief that we're tougher than aliens who have conquered 1,000 worlds. Sullivan looked at him with steady eyes. Chris, those aliens made one critical mistake. They assumed we would react like every other species they've encountered. They assumed we would choose survival over freedom. She stood and walked to the window that looked out over Washington, D.C. But we're not like other species. We're humans, and humans have never been very good at backing down from a fight. In space stations and research facilities across human territory, scientists and engineers worked around the clock to prepare humanity's response. The aliens had given them 72 hours to surrender. Instead, humanity spent those 72 hours preparing for war. Sub-Commander Kethrall of the Zephyrian fleet studied the tactical display showing the human colony of New Ceres. The small mining world looked defenseless from space, with only a few orbital platforms and what appeared to be civilian ships in the area. His uncle, Chancellor Veltar, had given him this assignment as a simple training exercise. 500 ships should be more than enough, Kethrall said to his tactical officer. The humans have had their 72 hours. They have chosen extinction over surrender. The alien officer nodded. Sir, our scans show approximately 2 million humans on the surface. The colony appears to be a standard mining operation. No major military installations detected. Kethrall smiled with confidence. This would be easy. Destroy the colony, broadcast the footage across human space, and watch as the other colonies quickly surrendered rather than face the same fate. Begin the attack, he ordered. What Kethrall didn't know was that Commander Steve Martin had been expecting this assault for weeks. The human commander stood in the underground command center that had been carved deep into New Ceres' largest asteroid. Around him, screens showed the approaching alien fleet. Sir, they're coming in fast, reported Lieutenant Nancy Phillips, his ground defense coordinator. 500 ships, just like our intelligence predicted. Martin nodded calmly. Are the mining platforms ready? All converted to weapon systems, sir. The asteroid miners have been loaded with nuclear charges. The freight haulers are ready with their antimatter payloads. Martin had spent the last month turning the entire New Ceres system into a trap. Every mining tool had been converted into a weapon. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with explosives. Every civilian ship had been equipped with military-grade weapons. What about the surface evacuation? Martin asked. All civilians are in the deep shelters, sir. Colonel Phillips has her ground teams in position. Martin looked at the tactical display showing the alien ships getting closer. Remember, people, they expect us to surrender or run. Instead, we're going to show them what happens when you threaten human colonies. The alien fleet reached the edge of the New Ceres system and immediately began scanning for targets. Sub-Commander Kethrall was pleased to see that the humans had not fled. This would send an even stronger message to the other colonies. Target the orbital platforms first, he ordered. Then we'll deal with the surface installations. The first wave of alien ships opened fire on what they thought were mining platforms. Instead, they found themselves shooting at heavily armored weapon systems that immediately returned fire with converted plasma mining tools. Sir, his tactical officer called out in alarm. Those platforms are armed. They're shooting back. Before Kethrall could respond, his fleet came under attack from an unexpected direction. The asteroids that his sensors had identified as simple mining rocks suddenly opened up like flowers, revealing hidden missile launchers and energy weapons. Impossible, Kethrall shouted. How did they hide so many weapons? Commander Martin watched from his underground bunker as the first phase of his defense plan unfolded. The aliens had expected to find helpless miners. Instead, they found a carefully planned ambush. Launch the freight haulers, Martin ordered. Across the system, ships that looked like ordinary cargo vessels suddenly accelerated toward the alien fleet. But these weren't carrying mining equipment. Each ship had been loaded with antimatter and piloted by volunteers who had no intention of surviving the battle. Lieutenant Phillips coordinated the attack from her station. Freight hauler Alpha is on target. Beta and Gamma are moving to intercept the alien command ships. The alien fleet tried to destroy the approaching human ships, but the freight haulers were small and fast. When the first one struck an alien cruiser, the antimatter explosion vaporized both ships instantly. Sub-Commander Kethrall watched in horror as more human ships rammed his vessels. These humans are insane. They're committing suicide. His tactical officer was pale with shock. Sir, we've lost 40 ships in the last 10 minutes. The humans are using their own vessels as weapons. The space battle raged for hours, but the real surprise came when the aliens tried to land ground forces on New Ceres itself. Colonel Nancy Phillips had spent weeks preparing the surface defenses, and she had learned from humanity's long history of guerrilla warfare. The alien landing Craft touched down expecting to find frightened civilians. Instead, they found empty cities and booby-trapped buildings. As soon as the aliens began advancing, the attack started. Phillips had positioned her forces in the old mining tunnels that ran beneath the entire colony. Her soldiers could appear anywhere, strike hard, and disappear back underground before the aliens could respond. Team Alpha, hit the alien command post and withdraw, Phillips ordered through her communication system. Team Beta, take out their supply depot and fall back to Tunnel 7. The aliens had superior weapons and armor, but they had never fought an enemy that used the terrain so effectively. Every building could hide human soldiers. Every tunnel could be an escape route or an ambush point. Colonel Phillips watched from her command bunker as her guerrilla tactics slowly wore down the alien ground forces. Sir, they're calling for orbital support. They can't handle our tunnel networks. But when the aliens tried to bombard the surface from space, they discovered another unpleasant surprise. Commander Martin had equipped his remaining ships with surface-to-space missiles that could reach the alien fleet in orbit. Sir, the humans are shooting at us from the planet's surface, Kethral's tactical officer reported. How are they getting missiles through our shields? The answer was that Dr. Foster's research teams had been busy. The human missiles used quantum tunneling technology that could pass through energy shields as if they weren't there. The battle for New Ceres lasted 3 days. When it finally ended, the human colony was destroyed, but Subcommander Kethral had lost over half of his fleet. Out of 500 ships, only 200 survived to return to the Galactic Council. Commander Martin died when the aliens finally overran his command bunker, but not before sending a final message to human space. New Ceres has fallen, but we made them pay. They lost 300 ships to take one small mining colony. If every human world fights like this, they'll run out of ships long before we run out of worlds. Colonel Phillips was captured during the final assault, but her last transmission was equally defiant. Tell the Council that this is what happens when you threaten human civilians. We don't surrender, we don't retreat. We make you pay for every meter of ground. Sub-Commander Kethral's report to his uncle was brief and shaken. Uncle, the humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They fight like they've already died. They turned their entire colony into a weapon. They used suicide attacks. They fought to the death even when defeat was certain. Chancellor Veltar listened to his nephew's report with growing concern. How many ships did we lose? 300, Uncle, over half the fleet. The old alien leader was quiet for a long moment. And this was supposed to be an easy victory? Yes, Uncle, but these humans, they're different. They don't seem to care about dying. They only care about making us pay for killing them. Across human space, the news of New Ceres spread quickly. The colony was gone, but the message was clear. The aliens could be hurt. They could be made to pay for their aggression, and humanity was just getting started. Dr. Amy Foster stood in the hidden research station called Pandora, located deep in the outer edge of the solar system, where no alien sensors could detect it. Around her, the final components of Project Ragnarok were being assembled by teams of scientists and engineers who had volunteered for what they knew was a one-way mission. How long until the first squadron is ready? Foster asked her chief engineer, Dr. Robert Kim. 12 hours, ma'am. The quantum entanglement drives are calibrated, and the ghost phase generators are online. Captain Larry Mitchell's crew is completing their final psychological conditioning now. Foster nodded grimly. The psychological conditioning was the most disturbing part of Project Ragnarok. The volunteer crews underwent a process that removed their fear of death and amplified their desire for revenge. It created perfect soldiers for total war, but it also made them something that was no longer entirely human. Captain Larry Mitchell had been one of the first to volunteer after receiving news that his family on New Ceres had died in the alien attack. His wife and 2 children had been in one of the civilian shelters that the aliens had deliberately targeted. Now he stood before Dr. Foster, his eyes showing a cold emptiness that hadn't been there before the conditioning. Captain Mitchell, are you and your crew ready for deployment? Foster asked. Yes, ma'am. My team understands the mission. We're going to show the aliens what total warfare really means. Foster looked at the man who had once been a cheerful cargo ship captain and felt a moment of regret. The conditioning had made him into an efficient killing machine, but it had also taken away much of what had made him human. Remember, Captain, there are no restrictions on this mission. You have authorization to target military installations, supply lines, command centers, and, if necessary, civilian populations. The Galactic Council wanted to exterminate humanity. Now they get to experience what extermination feels like. Mitchell nodded, without emotion. Understood, ma'am. My crew is ready to begin operations. The first Ragnarok ship looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. It was sleek and black, designed to be almost invisible to sensors. More importantly, it could phase in and out of normal space, appearing anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Mitchell's ship, the Vengeance, left Pandora Station and immediately quantum jumped to the heart of Council space. Their first target was a Zephyrian supply depot that supported 3 different invasion fleets, phasing into normal space in 3, 2, 1, reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Karen White. The Vengeance appeared directly inside the supply depot's defensive perimeter, bypassing all their shields and early warning systems. Before the aliens could react, Mitchell's crew launched quantum entanglement torpedoes that destroyed 6 supply ships simultaneously. Target the fuel depot, Mitchell ordered calmly. Use the reality anchor bombs. The reality anchor bombs were Dr. Foster's most terrifying creation. They created fields where the normal laws of physics were suspended, making faster-than-light travel impossible and causing energy weapons to malfunction. The Zephyrian base commander tried to call for help, but his communications were jammed by the reality anchor field. He watched helplessly as the small human ship systematically destroyed everything in the depot. "Sir, should we surrender?" his tactical officer asked desperately. "To who?" the commander replied. "They're not responding to any communications. They're just killing everything." Mitchell's crew worked with mechanical efficiency, destroying every ship, every building, every piece of equipment in the depot. When they were finished, they simply phased back out of normal space and disappeared, leaving behind only wreckage and confused alien survivors. This pattern repeated across Council space over the following weeks. Ragnarok ships appeared without warning, destroyed their targets, and vanished before any response could be organized. They hit supply lines, command centers, research facilities, and communication hubs, but the psychological warfare was even more effective than the physical attacks. Mitchell's crew began broadcasting messages across alien communication networks, and these messages were unlike anything the Council had heard before. "You wanted to exterminate humanity," Mitchell's voice said in the transmission that reached every alien world. "You thought we would surrender like the other species you've conquered. Instead, you've created something much worse than an enemy. You've created a species that has nothing left to lose." The messages continued to spread across Council space. "We are no longer fighting for victory. We are fighting for revenge. We will destroy your worlds, your fleets, your civilizations. We will hunt you across the galaxy until there is nothing left of your empires but radioactive dust." Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated the Ragnarok operations from his flagship, the Defiance. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood beside him, watching the tactical displays that showed human ships appearing and disappearing throughout Council territory. "Jake, are you sure about this?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "We're not just fighting their military anymore. Some of these targets have civilian populations." Morrison's expression was hard. "Lisa, they declared total war on humanity. They plan to exterminate 40 billion people. Now they get to learn what total war actually means." On the screen, reports came in from Ragnarok Squadron 7, led by Captain Susan Lewis. Her target had been a hive queen breeding facility that produced the insect-like warriors used in the Council's invasion forces. "Mission accomplished," Lewis reported. "Breeding facility destroyed. No survivors detected. Moving to secondary target." Rodriguez felt sick as she watched the reports. "Jake, these crews, they're not human anymore. The conditioning has turned them into killing machines." "They volunteered," Morrison replied. "Every single one of them lost family members in the Council's attacks. They chose this." Dr. Foster's voice came through the communication system from Pandora Station. "Admiral, I have an update on Project Apocalypse. The new weapons will be ready for deployment within the month. What kind of weapons? Rodriguez asked. Foster's voice was grim. Planet killers. If the Council won't accept our terms, we'll start destroying their homeworlds entirely. The psychological impact of the Ragnarok attacks was devastating to Council morale. The aliens had never faced an enemy that fought with such complete ruthlessness. Their own populations began to panic as reports of human attacks spread. Chancellor Veltar held an emergency session with the Council leaders, but the mood was very different from their confident ultimatum to humanity months earlier. The humans have become something we didn't expect, Veltar admitted. They're not fighting to win territory or resources. They're fighting to cause as much damage as possible. Hive Queen Zakh's compound eyes showed fear for the first time in centuries. My breeding facilities are being systematically destroyed. These human ships appear from nowhere, kill everything, and disappear. We cannot defend against enemies that can strike anywhere at any time. The crystal being Kethanol spoke in harmonics that showed distress. Our trade routes are collapsing. Our supply lines are cut. Our allies are beginning to question whether continuing this war is worth the cost. What do you recommend? Veltar asked. End this war. Zakh replied immediately. Offer the humans whatever they want. Territory, resources, technology. Anything to make them stop these attacks. But it was too late for easy solutions. Captain Mitchell's crew had just completed their most devastating attack yet. The complete destruction of a Zephyrian colony world with 2 billion inhabitants. The message that followed was broadcast to every alien world in Council space. This is what extinction looks like. You tried to do this to us. Now we're doing it to you. The only question is how many of your worlds will burn before you surrender. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson about humanity. When pushed to the edge of extinction, humans didn't become desperate or afraid. They became something much more dangerous. They became ruthless. 6 months after the war began, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the captured alien battle station that now served as humanity's forward command post. The massive structure had once been the pride of the Zephyrian fleet, but now human flags hung from its walls and human crews operated its weapon systems. Captain Lisa Rodriguez approached with the latest intelligence reports. Jake, we're receiving communication requests from the Galactic Council. They want to negotiate. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the current state of the war. 3 alien homeworlds had been completely destroyed by Ragnarok attacks. 2 major species had withdrawn from the Council alliance. The remaining alien forces were scattered and demoralized. What are they offering? Morrison asked. Complete withdrawal from all human space, war reparations, and a formal apology. They're also offering to recognize humanity as a sovereign power with full territorial rights. Morrison studied the data for a moment, then shook his head. Not good enough. Rodriguez looked surprised. Jake, this is everything we initially wanted. We can end the war right now. No, Lisa. They had their chance for peace when they first contacted us. They chose war instead. Now they get to live with the consequences of that choice. On Earth, President Kate Sullivan was having a similar conversation with her advisors. General Chris Taylor was arguing for accepting the Council's peace offer, while Dr. Amy Foster advocated for continuing the war until humanity achieved total victory. Madam President, General Taylor said, we've achieved our objectives. Human space is secure, and the aliens are offering everything we could reasonably want. Continuing this war serves no purpose. Dr. Foster disagreed strongly. General, these aliens plan to commit genocide against our species. They only want peace now because we're winning. If we stop now, they'll simply rebuild their forces and try again in a few decades. Sullivan looked at the reports from the front lines. Colonel Nancy Phillips, who had been captured at New Ceres but later rescued by a Ragnarok team, was now leading successful ground campaigns on multiple alien worlds. What's Nancy's assessment of alien capabilities? Sullivan asked. Dr. Foster pulled up Phillips's latest report. She believes the Council's military forces are broken. Their supply lines are cut, their morale is shattered, and their allies are abandoning them. She recommends continuing operations until we achieve unconditional surrender. General Taylor frowned. That could take years. How many more people will die? How many humans would have died if we had surrendered 6 months ago? Dr. Foster replied. These aliens don't deserve mercy. They deserve to be reminded that threatening humanity was the worst mistake they ever made. President Sullivan made her decision. Continue military operations. Send a message to Admiral Morrison. No negotiations until the Council surrenders unconditionally. In space, Morrison received the President's orders and immediately began planning the next phase of operations. Captain Susan Lewis and her Ragnarok squadron had just completed the destruction of the Council's primary military academy, eliminating an entire generation of alien officers. Admiral, Lewis reported. Target destroyed. No survivors. The aliens are running out of trained personnel to operate their remaining ships. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Good work, Captain. Your next target is the Council's emergency command bunker. Intelligence suggests that Chancellor Veltar and the other leaders are hiding there. Meanwhile, the psychological warfare continued to devastate alien morale. Captain Larry Mitchell's crew had begun broadcasting recordings of alien surrender messages across Council space, showing that resistance was futile. Citizens of the galaxy, Mitchell's voice said in the latest transmission. Your leaders brought this war upon you. They chose to threaten humanity with extinction. Now you are experiencing what extinction means. Surrender now, and we might allow some of your species to survive. The alien populations were in full panic. Refugee ships fled from world to world, but nowhere was safe from the Ragnarok attacks. The humans seemed to be able to strike anywhere at any time. Chancellor Veltar huddled in his underground bunker with the remaining Council members. The proud alliance that had ruled much of the galaxy for millennia was falling apart before his eyes. We have to try again, Veltar said desperately. Send another message to the humans. Offer them anything they want. Hive Queen Zaketh's mandibles clicked with despair. What more can we offer? We've already promised complete withdrawal, reparations and recognition of their sovereignty. Then offer them territory. The crystal being Kethanol suggested. Give them entire sectors of space. Give them control of trade routes. Give them whatever they want to make this stop. Veltar composed the message personally, offering humanity control of vast regions of space, access to advanced alien technology, and tribute payments that would continue for centuries. Admiral Morrison received the new offer while standing in the wreckage of an alien space dock that his forces had captured. He read the terms carefully, then looked at Captain Rodriguez. They're offering us half the galaxy, Rodriguez said in amazement. Jake, this is more than we ever dreamed of achieving. Morrison walked to the window overlooking the damaged alien facility. Human engineers were already working to repair the systems and convert them for human use. Lisa, do you remember what they said in their first ultimatum? They said we could keep one world. One single world for 40 billion people. I remember. They were so confident that we would surrender. They thought we were just another weak species that would roll over and accept their terms. Morrison turned back to face his tactical advisor. Now they're begging us to stop the war, offering us territory and wealth and technology. Rodriguez could see where this was going. You're going to refuse, aren't you? Morrison nodded. Send this message to Chancellor Veltar. The Council pleaded for peace. Humanity refused. Your terms are rejected. Unconditional surrender is the only option that will be accepted. Dr. Foster's latest project was nearing completion on Pandora Station. Project Apocalypse consisted of weapons that could destroy entire star systems, turning suns into supernovas and eliminating all life within several light years. Admiral, Foster reported, the Star Killer weapons are ready for deployment. 1 shot can destroy an entire system. If the aliens continue to resist, we can eliminate their remaining homeworlds completely. Morrison studied the technical specifications of the new weapons. They were terrifying in their power and scope. How many systems could we destroy with our current stockpile? 50, sir. More than enough to wipe out every major alien civilization in Council space. The final alien attempt at negotiation came 3 weeks later. Chancellor Veltar appeared on the communication screen. his once proud bearing reduced to obvious desperation. "Admiral Morrison," Veltar said, "I am prepared to offer the unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council. We will disband our military forces, abandon our territorial claims, and submit to human authority. Please, we only ask that you allow our civilian populations to survive." Morrison looked at the alien leader who had once threatened to exterminate humanity. "Chancellor, 6 months ago you gave us 72 hours to surrender or face extinction. You brought 50,000 ships to enforce your ultimatum. You planned to relocate 40 billion humans to a single world." Veltar's shoulders sagged. We made a mistake. We underestimated your species." "Yes, you did," Morrison replied coldly. "You assumed we would react like every other species you've conquered. You assumed we would choose survival over freedom." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in. "Your unconditional surrender is accepted. But understand this. Humanity will be expanding further into the galaxy. We will be building new colonies and establishing new trade routes, and if any species ever threatens us again, we will not give them 72 hours to reconsider." President Sullivan addressed both humanity and the galaxy in her victory speech. She stood before the cameras in the White House, but her words were broadcast to every human world and every alien civilization. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council demanded our surrender. They believed that humanity would choose slavery over freedom, submission over resistance. They were wrong. She looked directly into the camera. "We chose to fight. We chose to show the galaxy that some species cannot be conquered, cannot be intimidated, and cannot be forced to abandon their dreams of expansion and growth." The president's expression became stern. "Let this be a lesson to every civilization. In the galaxy, humanity will continue to expand among the stars. We will continue to build new worlds and explore new frontiers. And if anyone tries to stop us, they will face the same fate as the Galactic Council." Dr. Foster was already beginning work on new projects. Project Apocalypse had been just the beginning. Now she was developing weapons and technologies that would ensure humanity's dominance for centuries to come. Admiral Morrison remained on his captured battle station, now the flagship of humanity's expanding fleet. Captain Rodriguez stood beside him as they watched human colonization ships heading toward former Council territory. "Jake, do you think we'll have peace now?" Rodriguez asked. Morrison smiled for the first time in months. "Lisa, the galaxy wanted peace. We gave them war, and we won. Now they'll have peace on our